You are now listening to Plastic Battles Radio. Hosted by Paul Pamphilo. Guest starring Attica Gazette. Episode 5. 1990 G.I. Joe Benelux Catalogue. Part 1.
Alright, so this is episode 5 of the Plastic Battles podcast, Plastic Battles Radio, and I'm with Attica Gazette here. We thought it would be really cool to run through some catalog photography. We kind of landed on, so I left this up to you, Ian, on which one we wanted to start with. So why don't you give a little background on who you are and why you chose this particular catalog?
Okay, I'm Ian. On Instagram, my handle's Attica Gazette. I chose this 1990 Belgium handout catalog, I guess, because probably the best G.I. Joe photography possible, and it's been available throughout the internet for the longest period of time. And unlike the typical Hasbro fare, it was far more in-depth and intricate. It's very inspiring when you're looking to do your own photography.
Yeah, I mean, this is also, what's funny is this is my favorite catalog as well. And I had seen images online a while back, but they were pretty small, and so what I had done is I had actually tracked this down on eBay and ordered it, and I have scanned these in prior to this episode. I actually scanned these in, I believe it was last year, and uploaded them to my website. If anyone wants to follow along, take a look at what we're talking about. If you go to plasticbattles.net and then go under Inspo on the main menu, you'll see the 1990 G.I. Joe Benelux catalog. Click on that link, and you will see all the spreads scanned in from this catalog. What Ian and I are going to do is we're going to run through these each spread and give our thoughts on what's inspiring about the photography or what's interesting about them to our, individually. So, and Ian, I think this is something I wanted to do with you because out of everyone, I feel like for some reason, a lot of your photography reminds me of these kind of catalogs more than maybe most other people. And so when I see this kind of photography, I think of your photography as well. So I think it was the perfect fit to have you on, and I'm glad, super stoked that you decided to do this with me. Thanks.
No worries. Thank you for having me, and that's quite the compliment. And really, these images were the biggest inspiration for what I wanted to do with photography. So I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, nice, man. I mean, these kind of catalogs, obviously I didn't have these, and I don't know if you had access to these. I don't think maybe when you were growing up.
No.
We like just the North American ones, right? But even those, the mail away catalogs, they had the kind of diorama photography and the earlier checklist catalogs that came with the vehicles. Those were so inspirational as a kid, and I stared at those things for hours. Anything that had basically G.I. Joes in some kind of a setting, even if it was like a Christmas catalog, I would stare at that.
Wish book.
Yeah, Sears Wish Book or JCPenney or Montgomery Ward, any of those kind of things. Or if you happened to go to a store, I remember going into a Hills department store. You didn't have those in Canada, right? Hills?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think they were like a Northeast American, but basically there was one pretty close to where we grew up, and we would go there a lot. Their tagline was "Hills is where the toys are," which is fantastic. It's like, think of a Walmart or something, not as big as some of the Walmarts are, right? But their tagline was about toys. Their toy department was huge for a regular department store, and they made a big deal out of Christmas. They had their own little, flyers, catalogs they sent out, but they would build, at least in the early days of Joe, I remember they would build end caps, and there were dioramas on the end caps, and they would set the figures up in the dioramas, and that it would take my mom some serious effort to get me and my brother out of the stores. We were staring at those dioramas, so yeah, these obviously are hugely inspirational to us. So without further ado, let's jump into the catalog. So Ian, I'm gonna let you start with the first spread.
All right.
Go right ahead, man.
G.I. Joe Catalog Photography Review. Photo number 1.
Okay, so the first image is a Cobra rally, I guess that would be the term for it, where Voltar looks about as tough as he's ever looked, despite being in fuchsia. They got the Cobra Commander on the steps. What's really cool is a lot of especially the American catalogs, really strayed away from showing the army builders and multiples, but this one there's 7 Iron Grenadiers, 7 Hydro Vipers, 7 Toxo Vipers, and Astro Vipers, and Techno Vipers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All set up pretty well. Nice big Cobra emblem on the floor too. One thing that really strikes me is how big these sets must be.
Right. Yes. Agreed. I mean, this set, like the steps, I mean, that looks like they're made of wood. And then like those big doors in the background. I always try to stare at this stuff and see, like, try to figure out what they're made out of. Is it wood? Is it foam? Is cement? Rock? Like, is it real? Is it not?
That must be a deep set, because I'm just thinking, I know how big a G.I. Joe is, and I know how much size 7 of them laid out that way take up, so it's probably 8 inches between the Astro Vipers and the Toxo Vipers, so it really puts things into perspective how this set building likely was done.
How do you feel about like the lighting on this one? Because it's very stark, Obviously they have it's just a dark room, and then they have a few spotlights basically on a couple different locations.
Yeah. Sometimes I think the darkness in a lot of the photography kind of gets overplayed because, well, I don't see the army, keeping their soldiers, in dark rooms. Like, it looks dramatic, but for Cobra Command, it works pretty well. And the way the lighting reflects off of battle armor Cobra Commanders does wonders for making that figure look really cool.
Yes, and that's for him and Voltar. That's two of the points I was going to make is the way the light is hitting them. You've got they're kind of backlit, at least Cobra Commander is, so that he's casting a shadow forward. However, they must have a reflector or a bounce off to the front side of him, so that the front parts of his chrome are lit up. The silver parts. Yeah. But it makes him very dynamic looking and very cool. Same thing with Voltar's gold. And I think what's really interesting to me in this, and I noticed it also in the following year's catalog, the Benelux catalog for the following year, is Voltar's like a big deal for some reason. And he's not really Destro's guy in this. He's reporting to Cobra Commander, and so are the Iron Grenadiers, which I find very interesting. Obviously it's just because of the offerings that were out that year. But I still find that interesting. I also love the posing on these. Like, Voltar's pose on the steps is great. Cobra Commander is not just standing there. He has some kind of a dynamic look to him. And then I love how every trooper that has a removable mask is the front guy's holding his helmet. That's
a nice little detail, because it kind of shows, since there's no way to differentiate the figures, rank wise, so having the front guy look like the officer that way.
Yes, exactly. Yep, the high ranking guy. Not only is he the first one, but he gets to remove his helmet. The rest of them gotta smell their own bad breath inside those tin cans. And the one thing that it's a little, I mean, I get it. Maybe it's easier to set them up that way too, but I really don't know why the Hydro Vipers would wear their flippers in to the room, but hey, maybe they are biologically engineered. Maybe it's tougher for them to get their feet out of the flippers, or the feet are the flippers. I mean, they got webbed hands. Why not?
Exactly. Hydro Viper. I've never had a complete one, so I'm really interested in how that helmet works.
Yeah, it's like I always thought it was very cool as a kid. Like the
Yeah,
helmet made him look like a demon, and but I was never a fan of the red purple scheme.
yeah, it's
But he's a guy that goes underwater, so it's fine.
yeah,
But it would have been, I think, cooler maybe on a different shade of purple or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
So
Well, I guess this is the first, real offering where Cobra went from blue to purple.
that's true. Who am I thinking? So they had, if you go back, you had a hint of purple on like Televiper,
Yeah,
and then I think Techno Viper would have been the first purple guy,
yeah.
and so you got them in here,
Oh, yeah.
and then
I just forget that he's an 87, and the
right,
rest of those
yes.
guys are 88s.
But who knows how they divvy these up, really?
Yeah,
Like what ideas came first and what were approved.
yeah,
For all we know, Toxo Viper just wasn't approved for 87. They approved him for 88.
yeah.
So
Well, they had to make room for Crystal Ball.
yeah, right. They had to make room for the weirdos. 87 had like a ton of individual weirdos, and
Yeah,
then like I was 88 or 89 just had a run of troopers. Like 89 did. Like you had Alley Viper and Night Viper and Heat Viper. You had all these
yeah.
troopers.
Well, I think the 87 named Cobras were so poorly received that, they just said, let's just go with troopers from now on.
Right. Well, I think we nailed pretty much all the key points in this.
Yeah.
The posing, the lighting, the assortment of figures. So let's move on to the next spread, which I'll kick off, and this is one of my favorite spreads.
G.I. Joe Catalog Photography Review. Photo number 2.
Falcon is briefing the team of Joes on some kind of a mission on the chalkboard in some kind of a, headquarters, control room, something like that, or briefing room. The posing is what stands out here in this photo. The sheer brilliance of some of these poses. You've got Hardball, like the way he's leaning on some crates. That lean looks like, to me, exactly how someone would lean into the crates. You've got the Battle Force 2000 guys. You got Avalanche leaning on the window next to Shockwave, and Shockwave's leaning up against like the radiator, with his arms folded. And then you've got Mercer kind of like slicking back his hair. I don't know what he's doing there. He's doing like a John Travolta.
I thought he was just confused.
Yeah, he is confused. I always think because he's got that like really like tight haircut. Maybe he's fixing his hair. And I like the muskrats kind of hold on to the map.
Mhm.
But like the posing in this is just brilliant. Even Spearhead's kind of sitting on a crate with Dodgers stepped up on it too, and then you have Max kind of jumping up on there. Basically takes advantage of every bit of posability these figures have to offer. Like Charboyle standing on his helmet up front. Like I just love it. Like you could easily just stand these guys in formation, but that would be boring. This is for a very still shot where they're just kind of listening to Falcon speak, I guess. This is very dynamic. Even the angle here is interesting. It's familiar. You'll see this kind of angle a lot in this photography. This, I don't know what degree it is, 45-degree angle maybe. And I get, if they got down on the ground and shot it at ground level, you would lose the ability to stagger figures this way and see them all in their entirety. So the reason they shoot these catalogs this way, so you can see more of the figure, top and side, and then you get more depth in the shot where you can see every figure without them. But basically you don't want people blocking each other like they do on stage,
Yeah.
So and what I also find interesting about this too is they have whatever's on. I'm trying to see what's on the chalkboard, but I can't figure it out. But they even have like little bits of chalk there on the tray. They have like Falcon shotgun on a rack, 3 of them, but they painted parts to be brown, which is awesome. These crates aren't just the plastic crates that come with some of the jet. They're like wooden crates that they built for the shot, or foam. Maybe they're foam. So, but fantastic all the way, and the lighting's very cool too. What do you think about this, Ian?
Oh, you nailed a lot of it. one thing that really strikes me with this is because you mentioned how they could have just had them all in formation like they did the Cobras up in the first photo. This one kind of shows that all the Joes are individuals. Red Dog's got a bad attitude. He's sitting on a crate.
Yeah, yeah. Taurus too, right?
Yeah, Shockwave's probably making jokes with Avalanche. Storm Shadow looks like he's actually paying attention. So there's subtle little things like that that really stand out, because I don't know what the file card situation in Europe was at that point, but if you look at this, you can kind of give everybody a somewhat of a character from it. So
yes, it's very the poses lend to their personalities. I think you
Yeah.
kind of draw conclusions of who these guys are by the way they're standing there.
Yeah, and the other thing that I find really neat is the figures aren't segregated by where they came out from. Like Battle Force 2000 guys aren't all stuck together. The Renegades aren't stuck together. So that's one of those things I think people sometimes find themselves being a little too handcuffed by.
Yeah, that's a good call out, because I agree. You feel like beholden to leave them in their groups.
Yeah, if you're going to take a picture of a Battle Force 2000 guy, you're not going to put him beside, Tiger Force Roadblock or something naturally. Maverick and Charbroil together, or the green guy, was that Blaster? He's stuck by himself.
Yeah, nobody likes Blaster.
Exactly.
I mean, let's be real.
Yeah.
And I feel like Knockdown is back there with the Renegades, but they don't want him back there.
Oh, no.
They're just like, dude, get away from us.
Yeah.
He's like, well, Mercer's not here right now, so maybe I could slide in and join these guys, but they're not having it.
No.
What's funny is how the pairings, like you were mentioning, that kind of segues into the next spread, actually.
Yeah.
You've got Avalanche and Shockwave kind of hanging out together, in the corner.
Oh, yeah.
Which is funny, near the heater, right? They're getting warm. They're getting warm before they head out on this Arctic mission together in the next spread. So let's move on to the next one.
G.I. Joe Catalog Photography Review. Photo number 3.
Ian, kick us off with this one. What are these guys doing together, and why is Shockwave out on some Arctic mission?
Well, I'm not entirely sure why they sent Shockwave. Might be because he's wearing a balaclava, or ski mask, as the Americans call it. And the blue kind of works well with the background. But this is really cool Arctic scenery, because it's looks like they're somewhere North Pole or something that has a lot of ice buildup. Sure, they're using foam to construct it, but they got the Cobra Wolf in the background. They got 2 of them. Probably the coolest Arctic vehicle. Shockwave being there makes no sense, but hey, they gotta make him look cool somehow. Avalanche is there because he's the closest thing to an Arctic figure for that year. They got was that the motorized vehicle packs or whatever it was called?
Yeah, the little Power Wheels ATV.
Yeah. Not sure who got to ride it there, but it's
it'd be tough if they both were on that thing. Like Avalanche just rode on Shockwave's shoulders there, like a clown act.
Yeah, or those old timey strong guys from the 20s. Yeah, it's kind of funny. The Arctic and the naval figures and vehicles were always really well done, but I think it's probably because they were such a boring and hard thing to play with. They had to make the toys really cool.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. What I like about this one personally is that I don't, just off the top of my head, I don't recall this happening very often. And it's something I just kind of realized is these catalogs, you'll see more duplicate vehicles in the shots. So there's 2 wolves here. You'll see more as the catalog goes on where they're army building vehicles, right? You don't typically see that in the North American catalogs. It's just one of this guy and one of this vehicle.
Yeah.
So I like
That's,
that there's a couple wolves patrolling here in this one.
yeah, and that's that's a good point because you'd see it on the cartoon or in the comic book, and it would be one thing, but it's very rare to see it with the toys, and that wasn't just GI Joe. It was Star Wars catalog photos were the same way, or I'd like to say Transformers, but there'd be like 6 of them in each picture because we had the 4 versions or all 4 steps of the transformation. The thing that I didn't mention earlier, but I really like about this one is how desolate the whole thing looks.
Yeah, it's very Arctic. It's very top of the world kind of this isn't a residential neighborhood. They are in the middle of nowhere. This is where maybe Snake Eyes gets irradiated, that kind of area.
Yeah.
There's a cave off camera here that we don't know about, where there's a bunch of snake armors in the walls for whatever reason, planted there by Cobra months before the Joe showed up.
Yeah.
But I think you're right. I think about Shockwave. He's, if you look at the offerings, if you look at everybody in the previous spread, he's got the balaclava, he's got full head, no exposed skin except for around the eyes. So if you're gonna put somebody in the Arctic, he's the guy out of this group of figures. So it makes sense. And maybe also there's some nice color coordination going on. The wolves are kind of like that light gray and blue, and so Shockwave's blue. So you have a lot of white, gray, and blue going on in this photo, which is nice.
Yeah. And that's one of those things where I think from a marketing standpoint, you want contrast in a way. Because, if you had Muskrat there or something, it would just look goofy.
Right. I mean, it's, like if you threw a quick kick in the snow.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't a cartoon, it might not look right, Yeah. The one thing I find about this too, which is funny, is I love the diorama. Obviously this is some kind of foam that they use like a hot knife to cut up to make it look like pieces of ice, and then they sprinkled whatever that is on top. I like how it bunches up in little balls, like on certain parts. I can't tell what this is. If it's not baking soda, maybe. It's got a little like a little gleam to it too, like shimmery spots.
Yeah, it might be sugar.
Yeah, it's powdered sugar, something like that. But I love how it lays on top.
Yeah.
And the one part that gets me about this photo is above Shockwave and Avalanche, that horizontal slice in the ice looks like a mouth.
Yeah.
A mouth to me. So I can't get past that. I'm like, if I think I've mentioned this to you, Ian, before, where I try to make foam rocks because you make awesome foam rocks in your photography, and I've tried, and I get so particular about the grooves I make. That if I make one wrong groove like this, I scrap the thing. I can't even look at it. And like this would drive me nuts if I had shot this. I would have to Photoshop out that mouth or something because there's no way that I could. I'm like, all the ice is running down. Why is this one running horizontal? But yeah, that's my only call out on this one from a negative standpoint. So, all right, cool. Let's go. Let's move on to the next one.
G.I. Joe Catalog Photography Review. Photo number 4.
This next one is like Stop the Press is amazing. It is one of the most amazing kind of diorama shots I've ever seen. And it's like obviously some kind of urban environment that's totally destroyed. We don't know if the Joes had a hand in destroying it, if they're getting there after. I kind of feel like that's a rendezvous point that they just chose to either extract or drop off Spearhead and Max and Taurus. To me, like Spearhead's moving away from the chopper, but Taurus is kind of moving toward it in a way. So I don't know what's going on, but I love how they have Lift Ticket kind of looking off to the side, like looking out the window, like a pilot would if he's that low to the ground. They obviously use some kind of a wash on the vehicle, on the Tomahawk, to give it that like coated look. And you'll see that on a lot of these photos. On the next one too. But a lot of these vehicles, they kind of give that dirty wash to the vehicles to make them look more weathered. I do find it interesting, this is a European catalog, that they have a Canadian sticker on the Tomahawk. So I noticed that. So that's right up your alley, man.
It is.
And let's just talk about the diorama, like the yellow paint, the wire, like to inside the foam to give it the feeling of like broken like cement structures and stuff like that. Man, this is off the charts. And this is one of the ones that in my back of my mind, I want to create a diorama like this, using this as my guide. But yeah, what do you think about this one?
Well, yeah, that really nice little details in this one, like wires stuck out of the busted walls. And I never realized that the positioning of Taurus and Spearhead were so different. It's kind of making me maybe they're sending those two to meet Taurus there. The posing on repeater is really good too.
Yeah, that's awesome.
There's so many little things in there. Like there's a piece of wire that looks like it was the the hand railing of the the flight of stairs or something, just behind Taurus. And the paint job is like that looks like it's obviously styrofoam, but the colors they used were nice and realistic, and the yellow I think adds a lot to it because it matches in with the figures in the vehicles because they're all light tan, or Taurus he's actually wearing yellow. It also adds some realism to the whole thing because yellow is a vibrant color that they use for parking space markers and whatnot.
Yeah, so it definitely gives you that urban feel too. Kind of like brings it home a little bit.
Yeah,
I think too, like in front of Spearhead and Max, there's a styrofoam piece with some wire sticking out directly, like if Spearhead's gonna walk right into it. It's kind of coming off the bottom of the page. It looks like those cement, I don't know what they call them, cement dividers they use on the freeway sometimes to separate lanes. Just the shape of it, and that those kind of little shapes just help bring it all together to me.
I just noticed there's like a 5 on the back of one of the builders. Might have been the address for it. It's
that was the parking level.
Yeah. Lift ticket was mad, so shot a bunch of rockets at a parking garage. He's a Canadian.
You could put some crushed cars in here. That would have been funny.
Oh yeah. And it's the thing that I like about this is it's a obvious homemade set, but they're using things that are things you could find. It's not pieces of styrene built up to look like this stuff.
Right.
You feel like if you had the chance, you could build something similar.
Right. Yep. I feel like if you had the time and patience, you could. It's within striking distance of doing. And I think too, even with, they use different kinds of wire, different different types of wire all throughout the photo. So it's not just we have one type of wire, I'm going to use it over and over again. Like in the top left corner, there's some real meshy looking wire. Then in the bottom right, you have like real kind of grid square wire. And then inside some of you have those like rusty looking thicker wire stuff. So I think that helps too, the variation in wire and other objects, so that it doesn't become so patterned where everything's kind of like just based off the same few things.
Wire that's sticking out of that like parking barricade or freeway divider. I think that's part of a an old coat hanger or something.
Yeah, maybe it's got that rusty color.
Yeah, I think most of it was used as that handrail I mentioned earlier. So I got one thing that really sticks out to me is the way they use black to look like blast charring.
Yes, that's a good call, man.
That's one of those things that really separates it from, that's what I think makes this more professional looking than, something you or I would make originally, just because it's those little details we don't think of.
Yeah, and you always wonder, like I think about this a lot. How Carson put together all the art of G.I. Joe and stuff, and he collected all that, and through that we get to celebrate the art. There's a Hector Garrido who did a lot of the artwork, and other guys. We don't know who did these. We don't know who photographed these. We don't know who built these dioramas.
Yeah.
It's kind of a shame, at one point I've been in contact with a guy who sold me transparencies for photography. Okay. Not this stuff. Oh my God, if I could get this stuff. But the transparencies you see in advertising and on the backs of the boxes.
Okay.
And he had gotten the stuff he was sold to me from someone that worked at an ad agency that took the photos.
Oh, wow.
And he knew, and I don't know if he worked there. He didn't give me that level of detail, but he knew who had photographed these.
Oh, wow.
And I had asked him if it would be possible to get in touch with that person so that they could be on the podcast. But he said right now, at least, they'd rather remain kind of anonymous. And I'm like, all right, that's fine. They just don't want, the publicity. He's probably an older person too at this point. But man, someday it would be great to at least find out a little bit of the goings on of how these were set up, especially if it was just, say, it's just a photographer working for an agency or on contract for an agency who's tasked to shoot G.I. Joes. He's not a toy collector, just a guy who this is their job. So they send him these toys and they have to figure out how to pose them. They got to figure out, how to make these figures and vehicles look their best. Yeah. It'd be fascinating just if they could recall what was going through their head at that time.
Oh, yeah. And then, one thing that I would probably also be interested there is, just saying that someone who has, absolutely no idea about G.I. Joe, I'd just like to hear how they refer to the figures as. Like, is Taurus, the bald guy or something? Because, people like you and I, we've got, a lot of love for the line. Sometimes it's kind of interesting to see someone with, not a hell of a lot of experience or knowing the details and the minutia of everything, how they view the whole thing.
Yeah, and then what happened to these vehicles and figures after? Did they send them back? Did they keep them? Did they give them to their kids or friends? Like, it'd be interesting to know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, I work in the creative industry and I've worked in agencies, so I kind of get how that works, at least nowadays. But how did it work in the 80s and 90s? Like, it'd be interesting to hear. All right, so let's roll on to the next one.
G.I. Joe Catalog Photography Review. Photo number 5.
So we're going to go from the inner city streets of wherever this was, downtown Detroit, maybe. Yeah. Apologies to anyone from Michigan. And we're going to go to the desert, this is 1990. So I'm assuming this was shot in 89, probably. Yeah. This is very timely. A year or two later, all of a sudden, there's a whole war for oil in Iraq and Kuwait and Desert Storm. And so, when I see this, I think of, this is going into the 90s. Because to me, the 80s was very Vietnam remembrance focused. A lot of Vietnam TV shows. So the army was very green. The army was very jungly. And then in 90, it switched. The army was very tan. It was very desert, So when I see the Desert Fox, it's interesting that, Falcon's there in his camo. But this diorama is, the dunes look amazing. Okay. But what do you think about it? What about this specific spread would stand out the most to you?
Well, this is really nice because desert photos are probably some of my favorite to do. This one is just, I think it's the pipeline that really makes everything for this one for me. Like,
Man, that pipeline is amazing.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's made out of. I'm still trying to figure it out, but it looks spectacular.
I think it might actually be real pipe.
Yeah, but the little spigot on there, like.
Oh yeah, and it's that's you wouldn't see this, I don't think, in a Hasbro produced one, just because the 91, 92 series both had a lot of desert camo figures, probably to capitalize on the Gulf War, but this has an aspect of realism you don't see in most toy ads.
Right.
So, I think there's some respect for the audience there.
How do you feel about, what I noticed at the pipeline?
Yeah.
Is the leading lines. So they point right to where Falcon and his little buggy, little motorized buggy is, the battle tank, riding tank, whatever that is.
Tank car,
yeah, that's right. So, but it points right to the top pipe.
Yeah.
goes through his head, and then the other pipe goes through his body, and it comes right to the and then the cannon on the tank car just keeps that direction going.
Yeah, and it's funny. You'd think they'd be trying to sell the Desert Fox the hardest in this picture, but as you mentioned, where the sight lines go to, it's Falcon who's the star of this one.
Yeah, yeah. Even Muskrat looks like he's watching what Falcon's doing.
Yeah,
Yeah. I think that's. And do you notice the little bit of wind spray with the?
yeah,
Yeah, there's like right on the fold. I guess you could
Yeah.
see it the most. Right on the pipeline, you see the little bits of sand blowing toward Falcon there.
yeah. That's a cool little detail. I mean, that sky in the background is probably my favorite part of the whole thing, just because it's so different looking.
I always wonder what these are obviously on some sort of a table, and then there's a little bit of a room, and then there's a backdrop, right?
Yeah.
So there's like a cloud pattern in this orangey kind of pastel-y look to it, and I just imagine sometimes when I'm trying to think of setting up my own photography, coming across a pile of old 80s product photography backdrops like this.
What you might actually have to look for is, ridiculous, old 70s or 80s bed sheets.
You're right. Yeah, just get a tie-dye shirt and throw it back there.
Yeah, I haven't used it yet, but I found some really bizarre looking tissue paper that I kind of want to use as a background sky at some point. Sometimes it's like why this sky stands out to me is it's so different. Like the Arctic photo we talked about earlier. That's just a typical blue sky. This is goes well with it color matches with the desert, but it's still kind of surreal looking.
Yeah, it is surreal looking, and like you were saying with the Arctic one, it's very stark there, just like it's very stark here.
Yeah,
that's interesting. And in the Arctic one, you had that red or blue, white kind of combination of color. Here, you have that tan and like orangey red. Even like the rockets and the gun turret on the Desert Fox are orange, like it is in the top right corner of the sky.
Yeah.
So there's that beautiful color coordination going on there.
Yeah. And
yeah, I even love the sticker. They took stickers from a Joe vehicle and put it on the pipeline. Just to give it that little something,
Yeah. It's those little details that I wonder if the guy who's doing all of this, or lady, I guess, it's the women can take photos too. I wonder if they were having fun.
I would say they, at least whoever's doing the set design, like that, it's work, but if you look at the city spread, if you look at this with the pipeline, and that had to be fun. I mean, I've art directed photo shoots before in my job, and I've had to play stylist with setting up footwear to be shot and things like that in interesting ways. That was the most fun part of the shoot sometimes.
Oh yeah. And like part of the reason why I said guy is, there are little details that the guy, the dude who, did photos of this probably played with toy soldiers as a kid and, now was getting a chance to do it again.
I mean, if I had to be a bet, I bet it was a guy. I mean, the chances are the time period this was, the subject matter this was, most likely was. But you never know,
Exactly.
Like the photographer could have been a guy, but the set decorator, the artist creating this pipeline could have been anyone. I mean, that's some skill right there. The paint and on that pipeline to make it look worn like that.
One criticism I'd have of this thing is the dunes. They're really cool and like they're well shaped. I just think scale wise they're a tad off, but it's also impossible to do one that would look a little more natural. But then again, I've never been to, an African desert, so I could be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, maybe they're too close together. Maybe, I mean, the pipeline's here, so maybe that has something to do with it. I'm really interested in what this material is they use for sand. It's not straight up sand.
No.
So, but I like it better because to me it looked, even though the gravel is not, it's larger, gravelly looking than it would be sand. It looks thicker and easier to sculpt into dunes than sand would be.
Yeah, and like I can't tell if the dunes are, like if they'd sprayed these, they'd put styrofoam or something down and then sprayed it with with glue and then put the sand down on it. I don't know.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah, but interesting. Yeah, and then if we could talk to one of these people, maybe they get some insight. But they seem to be anonymous, so we can't talk to them.
Yeah.
All right, let's roll. Let's roll on.
G.I. Joe Catalog Photography Review. Photo number 6.
Okay, let's talk Warthog. Let's talk Rainstorm.
Yeah.
Let's talk Raptor on the beach. This is amazing just from the lighting and the rain. I mean, let's talk about the rain. This is like actual water spraying down. I don't know if they used like a shower head or whatever they use to spray this down. Raptor's cape has got to be soaked through. There's not a lot of room for where the Warthog's going to go here. There's no, he's coming up on the beach to, I guess they're aiming at Raptor, but it's basically just rocks and then a wall of rocks. Now, on this one, two things that stand out to me. The rock wall is definitely foam, right? Carved, as is the structure in the water, which I love because it's got that cutout part to it, like you see sometimes in the wild, so that brings a level of realism. Plus, I love there's a little blue in the water just past that in the top left corner, and then it comes in. I love the Warthog, always one of my favorite vehicles. So, then the rain on it, it's wet, it's coming out, it's doing the amphibious thing it should. I love it. I like the group of figures that are matched up with it. And Raptor's hilarious. Like, the fact that they're coming after Raptor with all his firepower is absolutely hilarious. My only criticism on this one is the rocks on the beach, I wish were different. Those little white stones I'm not feeling.
Yeah.
But other than that, I love it. What do you think?
It's really, really dynamic. There's a lot of excitement to this picture, which is amazing because, Raptor's the focus of it. The rain coming down is just that's a really hard thing to capture, and the fact they did it so well really impresses me. The pebbles they use for the beachhead are, I see what you mean, and I kind of know why they chose those ones, but I don't think it translated well as the world of 3 3/4 inch action figures.
I think the colors, I think it just reminds me of garden stones.
Yeah. Yeah, they don't work, I don't think. I don't know. And I really like how they got Raptor's, falcon flying in the background too.
Oh my God, I never even saw that.
Yeah.
Dude, I've looked at this 100 times. I never noticed him.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's amazing. Like, he's coming in to say, it looks like he's going to attack Raptor himself. Maybe he's pissed that Raptor got him into this mess.
Yeah.
But I do love that.
Taxes, now you're screwing us around.
What would have been cool for this is if you had like 30, he screwed his taxes. But no, if you had like, instead of one, you had like a bunch.
Oh yeah.
Like a whole flock of Raptors all coming off the rocks at the Joes like that.
Yeah, that would really. I think that'd be really cool to see. The posing on Repeater, I'm gonna stop and mention because it looks almost exactly like his card art.
Yeah, that's a good call, man.
I always like it when they kind of do that because the card arts, especially for a guy like Repeater, who I think showed up in 4 comic books. It ties everything in that way,
But yeah, what was interesting is I feel like when he came out, he was it was 88, right?
Yeah.
So all the marketing for Hasbro, like, paper cups and plates for parties and folders, and the Repeater was like front and center and all this stuff.
Yeah.
he didn't get much. They didn't have a cartoon around, obviously, and then he didn't show up too much in the comics. So he kind of is like never really. I don't really understand what his personality is. I've never seen him enough to know. You know.
You know that's funny. You mentioned how Repeater was the guy on the party plates and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a antique mall a while back, and the only GI Joe things they had were a couple of puzzles from the early '80s where nobody matches what they're supposed to look like.
Yeah.
But they were too high up and didn't have prices on them. And the other thing was a 1988 or '89 GI Joe kite with Repeater on it.
Yes. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it was like, wow, not the figure I would have chosen, but hey.
Seemed to be he was like every year they had their guy, like 82 slash 83, like Grunt was the guy on everything. And then, then it was Duke, and then so it's interesting how they pick those guys. Falcon in 87 was everywhere.
And it's funny, they usually chose, really militaristic figures for that stuff. And I guess, 83, they'd also toss Gung Ho in every once in a while too.
That's true, right?
Yeah. And 85, I think it was Flint. Yeah. Like,
85 was like the peak, like it was so popular, I remember.
Yeah.
It just seemed to be everywhere. I mean, it was the room where they had Flint and Snake Eyes and Lady J, and like they just kind of like you could get anything you wanted in 85. 86 too. Then the popularity came down a little bit after that, but
yeah. Well, I think I think they kind of strayed a little too far in 86.
Yeah, I think it's probably that, it definitely had weighted way heavier on the sci-fi. And then but you also had no slight on sci-fi himself. But also too, like age of people, like if kids were a certain age and when it came in 82, 4 years later, they're getting a little older. Maybe, that had something to do with it too. More competition maybe too, but.
Well, I always, if you look at the way the line is designed, it almost kind of goes in 2.5 year increments. I'll go 83, 84, because 82 is kind of a write-off in a way, because everyone got re-released with swivel arms in 83. But like 83, 84, there's a real specific style to everything.
Right.
85 is kind of halfway. You can look at that year as both, those figures work well with the 82 or 83, 84 stuff and the 86 stuff, but it's kind of a buffer year. So I think the way they kind of intended things, is probably they expected, kids to have their attention, for a couple of years and then have an easing out year, because if you look, 87 and 88 go pretty well together. 86 kind of it fits with both years, but there's also tons of changes to the style of the line by that point. They don't have the painted background. It's a digital explosion rather than a painted explosion. The logo changed.
Yeah, they went to the 3D logo versus the straight up one.
Yeah. So it's that has nothing to do with picture Raptor, but I wanted to say that.
You never know. One last thing on this spread. If you notice on Dodger's upper right arm, there's a lens flare. You see it?
Yeah.
Just a little something there, If you want to know what he'd look like with neon upper arms, there you go.
I kind of like seeing that because it shows that even though this is a professional setup and stuff, they, mistakes like that got through.
They were shooting on film back then, and looking at everything through a loop and trying to decide what's the best photo on the negatives. I think it's something to be said where most people, including myself in a lot of ways, have no idea how easy we have it nowadays doing this stuff.
Exactly.
Which is why this is more impressive. Because as a kid looking at this stuff, not only did you need to have the figures and the vehicles to recreate these setups and then learn how to put together dioramas, you didn't have the internet for resources. You didn't have But if you wanted to take this kind of photography back then, it was like black magic. Like you'd have to learn photography, learn how to develop film, learn how to, all that kind of stuff. Learn how to build dioramas and sets and do the lighting and everything for the photography without the internet, without any access to very specified training or anything at cheap prices. You'd have to go to school for all of this stuff or learn as in some kind of an apprenticeship. It's amazing to me. I think it just gets lost on how easy it is to do this stuff like on Instagram now.
Yeah, no. When you mentioned this was film, I had to stop and think and go, well, yeah, shit, this was on film.
So those negatives exist somewhere, maybe.
Yeah, they're probably somewhere in the Netherlands or something.
Yeah, in a warehouse, like a big X-Files warehouse full of old G.I. Joe photography.
G.I. Joe Catalog Photography Review. Photo number 7.
Rolling on, I'll let you kick this one off. We've got Destro and his Iron Grenadiers and demons like rolling through volcanic wastelands looking for battle. What do you think about this?
Well, this is the coolest any of these figures have ever looked to me. Where they've got, multiple demons, it's a big vehicle and seldom seen actually. It's really cool. And then they got Destro and his despoiler, flying around. And then you got 7 Iron Grenadiers just kicking around, That was what Cobra Commander was telling them to do. They got to go hang out in Hawaii somewhere with volcanoes. Thing that strikes me is they managed to get, colors that went well with, black and red and gold without, actually using any of those colors. Destro's cape looks really cool. I don't know if it's fabric in this. It almost looks like they cut up an old binder and used the vinyl cover for it.
Yeah, I wonder about that. It's a good call. I was thinking maybe they use string to tie it up in a couple spots, but you never know. Maybe they could even sprayed it with something to make it more solid.
Yeah. This is where, these types of things, like these catalogs are really impressive to me as they make figures I don't have any interest in look desirable.
Yeah, because you're more into the guys prior to 85, right? The ones that have the non-ball neck, right?
Yeah, swivel necks. So it's so seeing stuff like this is I've always found the Iron Grenadier to look like a space conquistador.
He does kind of, doesn't he? He's got a conquistador sword.
Yeah, I don't know. It's a really cool picture because it makes these guys so desirable to me, even though it's not really my jam. And it's got that nice fiery sky in the background, too. Unlike the one with the pipeline, the lighting is really cool, like cold in this one.
Yeah, it does have, it's like they have like a blue light shining from the front, or a really cool one. Yeah.
Provides, something different. You get these bright oranges, but at the same time, it's, a chilled image.
Right.
There's a nice dichotomy there.
Yeah, and you got the paint wash too on the demon and stuff. It just looks dirty and rugged. I think it's one of the coolest I've ever seen the demons look is right here. And I know a lot of people that don't like this vehicle. I always thought it was great as a kid. I mean, I never took it up into its raised up form because that's just kind of goofy, unless it's for a very specific purpose. But that low crawling wide vehicle, I always thought was so cool. I had the despoiler and I had the demon, but I never even thought as a kid to put the despoiler on top of the demon turret, even though it's meant to go there. And looking at it right now, it's so obvious, but I'm trying to recall as a kid, and I'm like, I never knew that. I really never understood. Like I had them probably sitting right next to each other and never put them together.
Yeah.
But I love that Easter egg stuff that they build in. It wasn't in the instructions. It wasn't on the back of the box. But if you happen to figure it out, like hanging the claws from the Terradrome doors, Yeah,
I didn't realize that was a thing that could be done until recently, actually.
Yeah, I didn't either till I was an adult. Or the G.I. Joe headquarters, all the different holes on the one bay can hold all the different cannons and vehicles in different ways. And I'm like, well, that's genius,
Yeah. And it's And I can kind of see why like they didn't put the despoiler on top of the demon in this picture,
Mm-hmm.
just because they got that disclaimer about figures vehicles sold separately.
Yeah, I also love how it works for the composition. I mean, having
Yeah,
the demon on an angle like this and
yeah,
having the terrain also on an angle leaves that open spot in the sky on the left side perfectly for Destro and his despoiler. Which is cool because basically Destro is in the top left. That line would cut right through his logo on the windshield of the demon and then go right to the corner. So I love that look. And then I love the depth of the Iron Grenadiers. If you look at the first dude to the
yeah,
to the left of the demon and follow that trail of figures back to the other demon in the
yeah.
background, love that. I
Oh,
don't.
yeah.
The one thing that drives me nuts about this is that harsh line on the edge of the out of focus mountain in the background against the sky.
Yeah.
Um, that if I took a photo like that, I wouldn't. Again, it's digital. I can do whatever I want. I can reshoot the
Yeah.
thing in 2 seconds. In film, don't have that option. But I would have not liked that. I would have probably tried to reshoot it. But
Yeah, well, I once, heard something about, angles and, what comes off and you don't see certain angles in real life, like in nature. That hard line you're talking about there really, doesn't come off as natural.
right.
Yeah,
Yes, you nailed
I
it.
think
You nailed it. That's exactly it. So it takes you out of that fantasy in a sense, you know?
yeah, and it's a shame because everything else is so well done.
Yeah, I just want to take like the blur tool in Photoshop and blur that edge.
Yeah,
G.I. Joe Catalog Photography Review. Photo number 8.
And we're back to the Arctic. And now, what I'm starting to see happening here, I don't know if you noticed this. Maybe. I don't know where we're going. I'm trying to pretend like I've never seen this before. But if you
Yeah.
go all the way back to the first, let's start with the second spread, say.
yeah,
Or the first, whatever. It looks like Cobra's assembling its forces in the first spread.
yeah,
You've got all the faction. Then you've got the Joes assembling their forces. You've
Mhm.
got Shockwave and Avalanche paired up. They end up in the Arctic together, right? Then you
Yeah.
get the city scene, right? Another part of the world, right? Then you've got the desert. You've got Falcon and the Desert Fox in there. And then you've got Sergeant Slaughter, Repeater, and you've got this like amphibious landing somewhere. And now you've got Destro and stuff. So you're hitting all these different terrains. But
yeah.
there's like, it looks like to me, they're mobilizing around the world. And they're all kind of like mobilizing and coming together to form these battles all over the world. Like, for
Yeah.
example, we were in the Arctic before with the ground troops. And now we're in the Arctic again. And you've got some aerial assault happening where you've got the Skystorm and the Conquest X-30 both taking off to go to battle. And you've got like that sky background again.
In addition to that, there's some other stuff that I noticed is like they don't reuse any of the same scenery, but they look in this to be, similar areas.
Yeah, this one here. What's funny about this one is the ice blocks on this one have kind of like a shininess to them, like they're painted with gloss paint.
Yeah,
And what that reminds me of is like Rankin Bass Christmas specials with the claymation, like a Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer.
yeah,
You know, it reminds me of those Rankin Bass like sets, which I love. Makes me love it even more. And
Yeah.
this one's like very simple. I mean, easy for us to say, but very simple. I mean, it's got beautiful ice boulders, really, right? And then you've got the little runway cones around where the Conquest is taken off.
yeah,
And I love how it looks like the Skystorm took off, and then it's kind of, when it took off, it veered to its left and is coming toward the screen. And then you've got the Conquest taking off right after it. So it
Yeah.
gives you that sense of depth there, which I really dig.
What year did the Conquest come out, anyways?
That was
80?
86.
Oh, okay. The 86 vehicles are kind of I always, just assume they're all from different years. I would have said it was 87, but apparently I'm wrong on that.
It was available in 87, you know? But,
Yeah.
at the original, I saw some original prototype shots of a Conquest, and the one difference was the yellow parts, the exhaust
Yeah.
and the missiles were green.
Oh, okay.
They were like a olive dark, like a olive green, and it makes it look a million times better. Just that.
Yeah, one thing I like about this picture is the cones they're using. They're yellow. They match in with the
Yep.
Conquest.
Good call.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, and the grays of the two planes match. Or what the hell? I don't know what the Sky Storm, if that's a plane or a helicopter.
It's both.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
actually based on a real prototype vehicle I found.
Oh wow.
Which it looks strikingly similar to this, which is hilarious.
Never would have guessed that. The setting here is, it's simple like you mentioned, but I think that's kind of a nice thing because I guess if you got a Arctic runway for a top secret couple of airplanes for an anti-terrorist force, they'd probably clear the top of a mountain or something for it, leaving a couple of chunks of ice just so it looks natural.
This is one of the simplest kind of setups I think in this catalog.
Yeah, doesn't leave a hell of a lot to talk about, but it looks nice.
Yeah, and the lighting's nice. It's got a nice little key light on the cockpit, so you can see how ridiculous Windmill is. But I think I found the prototype sketch for the vehicle. Here it is. I found it. It was called the X-Wing aircraft. It was Sikorsky's 2-in-1 idea. So I think if you search Sikorsky, Sikorsky, X-Wing, you'll see it.
Wow, it does kind of look like it.
Right. It looks very close. The only thing that's really different is the cockpit part of it.
Yeah, it's like,
and it's only different because it's simplified for the toy.
Yeah.
All these kind of toys would have been much bigger if the designers got their way,
Oh, that's true. Then I don't think anyone would get vehicles for Christmas or their birthday, though.
Yeah. But yeah, that's interesting. All right, cool. Well, yeah, that's a simple one on spread 8. So let's hit up spread 9. We're getting into some really. That was a simple one. These next few are very complicated and very amazing. Yeah, why don't you kick us off on this one, because this is one of my favorites.
G.I. Joe Catalog Photography Review. Photo number 9.
Okay, this is this one with the Cobra Imps crossing a bridge to blow up Charbroil and Lightfoot is actually my favorite G.I. Joe image of all time.
Whoa! All right, that's huge. So I love this image, but I didn't go full on all time. Tell me why.
I don't know. There's just something about the setting, the whole mountain range type thing, the little bridge,
Oh, I know. It's so good.
It's funny because if you look at, the far right at the back imp, you can tell that he's coming down a path, and I don't know, there's just my favorite thing. The way the rocks are done. This is where I got the idea to do all of the rocks that you see.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, you like the rocks that you've done look very similar in style to this. So you nailed it, I think.
Thanks. Funny story about that. One of my friends, he's not really into G.I. Joe anymore, but I've known him for since the early 2000s. What his main hobby actually is model railroads, and so he has a good knowledge base on doing this type of scenery. So I asked him, hey, what do you think this is made out of? And he told me floral foam. And that's where I used it, got the idea, and I've been trying to emulate this picture for ever since.
Yeah, I mean, I've used floral foam thanks to you, because you told me about using floral foam, and I was trying. God, what did I start with? Like insulation foam, which is great. But it doesn't come in blocks. It comes in like sheets. So you can't get that like thick, blocky look, with the insulation foam. So but there's different kinds of floral foam. I found there's like some that are real powdery, and those make a lot of a mess. Yeah. But there's other ones that are a little more solid, like you can shave them down, and it doesn't create so much like dust,
I warned you about that mess.
Yes, you did. I remember. I was like, this is what he was talking about.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think on these? Now, when I look at this and I look at these boulders, I want to create them too. I mean, I look at this, I'm like, my God, they're not real, but that makes them cooler. The fact that you can control the look of them instead of just layering a bunch of rocks on top of each other. I mean, imagine trying to create a diorama with rocks, real rocks, in this size. There's no table that would be able to hold it.
No.
Like, you wouldn't be able to do it. So you need to use foam. But, like, the way these are painted and the texture on them, and then laying in the moss on top, just gives it that surreal vibe that makes it so much cooler to me. Now, when I look at these, though, to my eye, and it's hard for me to, like, understand this, the size of this foam, like, it looks like one giant piece of foam they carved into. I don't see, especially where the tracks are for the imps. Like, I don't see how this is a lot of little pieces of foam stuck together. This must be giant pieces of solid foam, right?
Yeah. I don't know how it works either. You know, some of that stuff does look kind of glued in to me.
Yeah, like, there are parts. Like, the rock behind Charbroil and Lightfoot is definitely separate.
Yeah. All I know is if I had the opportunity, I would spend an incredible amount of money to own this very set.
You and me both. We'd be bidding each other out of our price ranges.
Maybe I'd just come to visit you then.
Man, like, even so there's a couple things on this, right? The gap between the two rock formations or the bridges. I mean, let alone the bridge being freaking amazing. That angle, it's on an angle, right? It's not straight up and down. It's like this nice, interesting angle. And who is perfectly centered in there, like off center, but basically starring is a pissed off Big Boa. Like, he's yelling at the Joes. Now, he could be telling the guys behind him to come on, but to me, he's raising his fist and shaking it. You damn Joes, get off my bridge. Oh, and then, like, who thought to put the roots or the branches underneath the bridge going across? Like, those little touches really set it over the top for me.
You know, and like that breaks up the blue background. The whole thing is just amazing.
Yeah, like, this is one of the best. I mean, he's wearing his boxing gloves, but I just love how Big Boa looks in this. And, like, I never would have, prior to this photo, thought of putting him in the imp. But now seeing him in the imp is like, no, he looks awesome in the imp.
Yeah. And it's hilarious, you know. This is such a great image, you know. Starring roles are given to, you know, two of the worst figures, Big Boa and Lightfoot.
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing I love is Lightfoot's little drone, his little mine detecting drone. They even took the time to dirty up the treads just to give it.
Oh yeah, they did.
Just to give it that little extra, like they did on the imps, you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and then, like, you're right. Like, Charbroil's kind of like he's a forgettable figure, right? Yeah. You know, I always liked Lightfoot. I like his Night Force version better, of course, but I always liked Lightfoot. I don't know. I shouldn't. By all rights, I should not like this figure. I shouldn't like that. They decided to take a guy who's black, green, and yellow and put a blue helmet on him, and then give him an orange robot. I don't know why they didn't just.
I always thought his robot was supposed to match him, but I guess it is orange.
Yeah, like, why wouldn't the robot be blue, or why wouldn't the Lightfoot's helmet be green? I guess I can kind of see it though. If it's green, it is missing something. Like, you do need an extra color in there. So. Over the years, I've really started to come around on some of these figures that I thought were goofy before. Like, if everybody was straight up Lieutenant Falcon or Ripcord, I think I would get super bored. Like, if they looked all modern military figures, I'd be like, nah. I think throwing in a Big Boa just makes it so much more interesting and fun.
Yeah. And that's, you know, actually the great thing about G.I. Joe is it's such a vast line. You know, you get bored of something, you can go find something else that'll tickle your fancy.
I heard someone else say, like, with G.I. Joe, their ARAH run, there's something for everyone. You got space guys, you got ninja guys, you got military guys, you got guys that are walking around naked with capes. You know, you just got everything.
Yeah, I'm pretty hardcore into the 82-84 style figure, but, you know, I went out of my way yesterday to buy, you know, Slice and Dice.
Whoa, interesting.
Yeah, and, you know, it wasn't even the red Slice, it was the orange one.
Oh, yeah. I've never owned that one.
He's a nice figure, actually. I mean, Ninja Force figures are kind of iffy just based on the
I
construction issues,
know.
but
They'd be so much cooler if they were just regular Joes. If they didn't
yeah,
have to have the action features built in. Like I had the
yeah,
original slice, the red one, right?
yeah,
And I had dice. But they didn't get much
yeah,
playtime because they had the little blocks inside their waist when you tried to swivel them.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like their chests and everything were so rigid that I just
yeah.
felt like, man, if they had just built these like a 84 Storm Shadow, I'd be all in.
Exactly. And it's funny that ninjas are supposed to be the most posable guys, and they've got the least
I
articulation.
know, imagine Ninja Force Scarlet, but done like regular Scarlet. So she didn't
Yeah,
have those like that weird Star Wars diaper crotch thing going on.
yeah, yeah. And exactly. Just to go back to this picture we were originally talking
I know
about.
we're getting sidetracked. It's easy to do though.
Oh, exactly. It's one thing that it kind of just shows that if you put questionable figures into a nice environment, you can make people want to buy them.
Yes,
You
that's a great point. It makes them look
Yeah.
cooler. Like Charboil never looked so cool that he does right here, or in the one previous that he was in. You know,
Yeah.
the lighting and the
Exactly.
setting make them look cooler.
And the nice thing about the lighting in this one is they just went with something to emulate daylight.
Yes.
I think because this is such an intense setting and stuff, if they'd gone with any other style of lighting, it would probably take away from everything.
Yes, agreed.
You know.
I think this is the perfect. I mean, they're up high. It's a sunny day. Obviously, you got blue skies.
Yeah.
It just makes sense.
Yeah, things can get overly. There can be too much of a good thing sometimes. If you tried to give this the same type of lighting as one where they're the Iron Grenadiers are going through the volcanic wasteland, it would probably still look cool, but it would probably take away from just the whole setup in a way.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. So this is, as you said, your favorite of all time, and this is up there for me.
G.I. Joe Catalog Photography Review. Photo number 10.
Okay, all right, so the next one. We're going to spread, what are we on, 10? Spread 10.
Yeah.
And this one, holy cow, man. Like, I don't even know what to say. I remember getting this catalog and seeing this picture for the first time and being like, how did we not get this photography here in the States or in North America? Like, how did we not get the gift of this photography? Because like you got this underground bunker swamp, like sewer area. The only thing missing is the turtles, right? Teenage Ninja Turtles are missing from this. Or this has kind of got a vibe. It reminds me of Big Trouble in Little China a little bit.
Yeah.
And I remember looking at this catalog and my girlfriend saw it and she was like, "Oh my God, that's awesome." And I'm like, "I know, that is awesome." Like she was blown away by this. God, it's like a simple setup where they're using foam and the wire again, right? But they're running that water through and then they get that green light coming through the water with that mist. They got the mist coming off the water. I'm trying to figure out how they did that. I'm like, did they drop dry ice into the water? Is it hot water? Is it steam? I don't know. But it's just sticking to the top of the water. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it would in that kind of environment. And then you've got the spotlight above Road Pig and Crocmaster. Awesome posing again. I love Road Pig standing on his cinder block. I love that. Yeah. And then you've got like those cool looking doors with the little control box next to it. Didn't have to make the control box. That's amazing. The red light coming through the doors. I don't know what's happening, but it looks amazing. And then you got the Joes on the other side, like sneak attack about to happen. To me, it's like Mercer's like clear. Storm Shadow's going to take a shot with his bow and arrow. Budo's losing his hat, which is hilarious. It's falling off his head. Who knows why? But I mean, you got Crocmaster's crocodile coming out of the water. That's the coolest that crocodile's ever looked. Man, there's so much here. I can't even. This is one of my favorites of the book. The lighting, even the lighting coming off the top left corner across the wall, just looks awesome. Yeah, I don't know. I could talk about this for forever. So what do you think, man? How do you feel about this one?
I'm now going to associate Mercer with Kurt Russell from now on.
He does have that vibe.
Yeah. Well, like Big Trouble in Little China. So that. Well, now I like Mercer.
We just got to give him a mullet. That's all.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned that like the spotlight style lighting on Road Pig and Crocmaster, and I like that because it makes sense in a way. Because if there's going to be lighting in this underground dungeon or sewer or whatever, they'd probably have it near the door.
Yeah, near the stairs there too.
Yeah, so like it makes sense in a way.
Mhm.
The colors are great. The greens really go in well with Crocmaster.
Yeah, yeah, man.
And it's a great way to get Road Pig involved because he's a hard figure to work into one of these kind of concepts. But
Yeah,
I could see them.
yeah, I could see these two having a conversation down in the sewers.
Yeah, they just want him out of the way.
He smells like the sewers. They're gonna put him back down there.
Exactly. And then the posing on Storm Shadow is really nice too because you can tell he's about to ventilate somebody.
Right.
And the martial arts guys, it's nice to use them in a picture like this where the cobras they're going up against or they're bruisers who aren't using guns or anything.
Right.
So there's not the style of overmatch that you'd see with the warthog and raptor. We can't take the crocodile out of the equation either. He's pretty vicious too.
That's right. It is. Maybe it is a 3-on-3 situation. I forgot about him.
Yeah, Buddha can match up with the crocodile. And the thing I like about the setting here is it works for like what the image is, but it could be a sewer, it could be like they could be in a castle. It leads a lot to the imagination.
Yeah, and like the paint on these walls, like coming down above the door and above Road Pig and Crocmaster, just that worn kind of, you can tell waters run down the wall. And I love
grimy.
Yeah, grimy. Good call. The pillars and the wall in the background, you can tell have that texture on them. And I'm like, is that texture on the object that was painted, or is that texture in the paint that was used?
Yeah.
I want, my brain wants to try to figure that out somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think?
I don't know now that you mention it. It's it might be a bit of both.
I
think
it adds to that feel like it's cement.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's because it's such a small, it's a weird scale to work with. If you're gonna paint something, if you do a sloppy job, you wind up with that type of texture.
I bet you it's probably just the foam.
Yeah.
But it looks amazing.
And like if you look at that little, I don't even know what the hell to call it. It's got the wire covering it. Just to the left and behind Budo.
Yes.
Yeah, like if you look, they got the buttressing around the stone of it. There's also little, little bits, like they put a couple of razor slashes in there to look like bricks.
Yeah, those little details really bring it together, man.
Yeah.
Like I even love, there's one of those smaller behind the crocodile.
Yeah.
That little key, like the little key light they have hitting the edge of it from the inside. Just really is a home run to me.
Yeah, and these are things that are hard to imagine. Other figures in. I think these catalog photos have made me really appreciate some of the 87, 88 figures. If you look through any of my photo streams anywhere, you'll occasionally see a random sneak peek photo or something. And it's, I think, because of images like this that, given me an appreciation for this era of G.I. Joe.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is to do with just the way that, we talked about how it makes the figures look cool by the setting and the lighting, but also the posing, just that conversational looking pose of Road Pig, the way his arm is out. To me, it looks like he's talking with his hands to Crocmaster. Yeah. He's explaining a story or something. It's such a subtle difference. If you move that arm a few degrees one way or the other, it changes that whole dynamic. But they got it just right.
One thing that I really, really do appreciate from these catalogs is, yeah, they're toys, but they're not being taken as pictures of toys in a way.
Right.
It's, it's almost like you're in that world.
Yes. Yes.
That's always been, a thing I've tried to do with my photography is take it seriously in a way. Not the act of doing it, but what I'm taking the pictures of. Gotta respect. I'm in the GI Joe world, right? When I'm doing that stuff.
I feel the same way. And I felt that way when I was playing with the toys as a kid. That I'm along for the ride, in a sense. I'm the embedded photographer with this whatever unit, and I'm just following along, capturing what's happening, whether I was here or not. It would be happening.
Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know. It basically gets you into that imaginary world, and I hate to say it, but the way things are going in the world these days, I'd rather be in the imaginary one. So I'm going to spend as much time there as I can.
That's the thing I've always enjoyed about this part of the hobby is, like the posing, like you're talking about. They've got Crocmaster and Road Pig having conversation. It looks cool. It's great. But if I'm trying to figure out a way to, sell toys, that's not my immediate go-to.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that that's what they went to really shows just how great these things actually are.
Yeah, I think so. It's like they're not toys here.
Yeah,
they're living, breathing characters in a setting.
Yeah, and I think that there's a respect for the property and a respect for the fan base with this type of thing. You and I are both realistic. We know this is designed to sell toys, but it's not such a blatant thing that there's a little bit of art to it.
Yes, that's where I was gonna go. Right, this to me is art. Everything from creating the scene to posing the figures. It's right down the line. Somebody designed these figures. That's art. Someone designed the look, the color palette, everything about these figures. They went on a card that had painted art on it. Then you take these figures out that are works of art in themselves. You build an environment that's artistic that they live inside of. And then you have a photographer who's an artist take a photo of it's just like Inception level artistic.
Yeah, and I think if you take a lot of pictures, you start to appreciate this stuff even more.
Yes, you start to see them differently, and you start to imagine them in different situations. And instead of just there's plenty of characters that, as a kid, even that I wasn't a fan of. A lot of the Battle Force 2000 figures I didn't really appreciate. Yeah. But as I use them more in certain settings, all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? Avalanche is a really cool figure. I really dig him. I never would have said that years ago.
Exactly. You see somebody who, their photos show how much they like a certain figure or whatever. You can start to develop an appreciation for it too. Mm-hmm. Like if you look, okay, Storm Shadow's got a bright red backpack. Right. Mercer's wearing jeans. But if these were all, just drab green figures, I think it would take a lot away from the whole thing. I don't know if, this picture would look as good if, it was Buzzer and Ripper in the background talking and, Flint, Snake Eyes, and Quick Kick in the back or in the foreground.
Obviously it would look cool, but you're right. Yeah. This assortment has a certain look to it, and they tie it together nicely. Just putting that orangey red window on the door ties into Storm Shadow's backpack, Budo's helmet and sword, and Mercer's vest, Yeah. And so it draws it all together. Plus the placement of it, it's almost dead center. It kind of frames the entire portrait. They almost have a triptych going on here because of the way the poles separate the image into thirds,
Yeah, exactly.
G.I. Joe Catalog Photography Review. Photo number 11.
Well, so you got a couple of those motorized action packs. I think those are the big selling points in this one. Mm-hmm. The Hydro Viper and Voltar for some reason. But so you got the Joes, infiltrating some strange Cobra, subterranean aquatic base.
Yep.
Like that last picture, this one's kind of divided into threes as well. Mm-hmm. The way they did the whole thing is kind of neat because you can tell, it might be, fish tank or something that they have this set built in just to get the water and everything. But I don't know. It's just a really cool picture and makes the hydro vipers look. They're not even in the water yet. They're not out of their element.
Right. I think like with this is the cutaway. This kind of.
Yeah.
I forget I don't know what the technical term is here, but basically
Yeah.
the ground and so that you can see into the water, it's just like a cut. So you're seeing under the earth. You're seeing under the water. And that's so interesting to me. It happens. I've noticed it a few times in these European catalogs where they do something similar. That's friggin' cool in my mind.
Yeah.
Just seeing the edge, like the top, the edge of the water where it's coming into the rocks is very cool. Also cool is you kind of have this feeling like this is Arctic sort of still, because you see behind Voltar there's snow, there's like a mountain range in the background. So Avalanche is there. He's now paired up with Lightfoot, so I don't know when that happened in the storyline.
Shockwave doesn't like to swim.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, obviously Lightfoot's a natural swimmer.
Yeah.
One thing, certain figures look better in multiples, and I think Hydro Viper is one of them. If you have a standalone Hydro Viper, but you put even a second one there or more, all of a sudden he looks way cooler. And the lighting on the one in the foreground here is awesome. The way he's lit.
Yeah.
And that little ladder they have that goes down to the water, also awesome. What's maybe not so awesome for kids in this is if they took these little scuba packs and put them underwater like this, I don't think they're going to work anymore.
Oh, probably not. One thing because you mentioned the cutaway, which I was trying to get at, but wasn't very articulate with, is I like that they still did it with the Voltar section, because they could have lowered that ground so that they show it, and
they kept the horizon the straight all the way across.
Yeah, they got little stones in where the earth was.
Yeah, I love it.
So it really does look like you're seeing under the surface.
Yeah, kind of like they have a purpose for this rocket sled too. It's good if you're coming through like a really low opening entrance in like a mine, like the little mine cars, like it's like one of those ones that be on the tracks. Because otherwise, I don't know what the hell the purpose of that thing is. But hey, I mean, why not?
Exactly. And I really like the posing on that foreground Hydro Viper.
Yeah, it's great.
He's got his the way they have his feet positioned, it looks like the flipper is just hanging over and,
like drooping over the edge, right?
Yeah, because the way they have both of the flippers gives that illusion off.
That might be the coolest I've ever seen a Hydro Viper look right there.
Yeah, because the way they have both of the flippers, it makes it look like it's actually rubber or something.
Yeah, it does, and it's just because they just tilted that foot.
Yeah. But they got that first one in the the one on his right foot. It covers up where his actual foot is.
Yeah, right. And they have their scuba packs in the background there against the wall. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, the way they got rocks in the background. Behind Avalanche. It's that's a level of detail you wouldn't expect.
Right.
And then looks like there's like an ice flow on the top of the water in the far background. Which,
it's even like all the bubbles they got coming off just really really sell that underwater look.
And you can tell those figures are actually underwater. Just the way the bubbles are going against them.
Yeah, and like the edge of the flippers, like on Avalanche, on the back of his flippers, you could tell that the bubbles are attached to the back.
So I don't know how they managed to make those bubbles. Maybe they're in a bottle of Sprite.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, there seems to be a couple streams coming straight up under Avalanche, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, who knows? It could be 7-Up or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's I don't know. Maybe that's. But I don't know how they managed to keep the figures in position that way underwater.
Yeah, I wonder about that.
But the thing I like about that is it really does show that it's there's no photo trickery in a way, or it's not Photoshop. I'm sure there was some post production on this stuff, but it's far more natural.
Right. Yeah, unless these guys were kind of propped up with a wire or something, and then they took that out after.
Yeah.
Or that's like solid clear epoxy that they're in, and it's
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah. Well, if you look at the the top where there's the reflection from the hydro vipers, does look to have some viscosity to it.
Yeah, and the straight up above the number one, above Avalanche, there's the little lip where the water kind of comes into contact with the rocks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Maybe it's mineral oil.
Man, I'd love to talk to somebody who put these together, man. Drives me nuts.
Yeah. Just you might ruin some figures, but you'd learn some good tricks.
Yeah, man, just put your beaters in there.
Yeah.
G.I. Joe Catalog Photography Review. First half favorite photos.
All right, so now that we wrapped up the first 11, why don't we, each of us, pick our favorite spread out of the first top 11? We'll do the same thing on the second half, and then we'll see which spread is our favorite out of all of the spreads. And the reason I'd like to do this is because, every spread's amazing, and really it's a crapshoot. If we were to rate each spread, I think they'd all be 4 and 5 stars. So let's just try to narrow it down to our favorite spread per section. So, Ian, why don't you go? I think I know which one is your favorite spread from this first half, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll since it's 3, I'll say my third most favorite spread is likely the Road Pig and Crocmaster, in their little swamp dungeon getting attacked by Storm Shadow, Budo, and Mercer. There's so much detail to that one. The second one's a bit of a toss-up, but I think I'm going to actually with the Warthog and going after Rap. I think it's the rain in that one that just makes everything so dramatic. Of course, my top overall for these 3 is going to be the one with the imps going over the bridge to attack Lightfoot and Charbroil.
Surprise, surprise. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, man. You can't go wrong with that one, man. That is one of the best.
Yeah.
All right. Well, those are good choices, man. I guess, for me, man, it's tough. Man, I wish it wasn't so tough. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow suit, I think, with you in saying the third place spread for me is this sewage place with Road Pig and Crocmaster. Definitely same points, the detail, the lighting, the scene. It's just so cool. It blows me away every time I see it. Number 2, all the different posing that went on in this briefing room, and the way it's basically accessorized with the door and the shotguns on the wall and the map and the easel. Man, I just love it. I love that setup. It's so cool. So
definitely.
Yeah, it's such a good setup. Number 1 as well, but I don't want to go there. So number 2 is the spread number 2. Now my top spread, my favorite spread of all, and it's just because the diorama is so kick-ass amazing, is going to be spread 4 with the Tomahawk in the destroyed city landscape. The Tomahawk is hovering. The nose of it's angled down. Lift ticket actually looks cool for once in there. All the wires coming out of the destroyed cement bricks, which are really just foam, but they look like cement. It looks fantastic. The blast patterns, like you had mentioned. Yeah. So my top is the Tomahawk, and your top is the imps. And man, I can't even believe I didn't put the imps in mine, man. It's just too hard.
Oh yeah,
it's too hard.
Exactly. There's so many great ones. Even what I'd probably consider as the worst of these images is still super cool because it makes Windmill look great for a change.
Yeah, I would say that's the weakest too, but still, on its own, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, exactly. And it's only ranked 11th based on the other 10.
Exactly. Yeah. All right, cool. All right, so that's our rankings for this one, and we'll do the same thing on part 2. And then what we'll do is we'll take our top ones from part 1 against our top ones from part 2 and see which ones win out.
Perfect.
It took some time, but I didn't want to rush through talking about this stuff.
Exactly.
There's so much to uncover, and there's so many personal stories or things that might be associated with a certain photograph or figure. So I'm glad we took our time, and it's cool. We'll split this into a second
sure.
episode. That'll be great. So the first 11, and then we'll get into the second 11. And the second 11, as like a sneak preview, has some awesome imagery in it, man. Oh, man, we thought these were good. Wait till we get to the second half.
Yeah.